Hey, what's going on, everyone? Good morning. This is the Maple Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. I'm Norm, along with Mike. It is Sunday, September 26th, 2021. We're rejoicing because the Maple Leafs atone for their series loss to
Yes.
the Habs last spring with a 4-1 preseason victory over Les Rats. All is good.
Yeah.
All is forgotten.
No,
Let's
no,
move
no,
forward.
nothing says revenge for the Game 7 loss than a meaningless preseason victory. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. At this point, we'll take it because
Oh
this
yeah.
is what's going on. Living in the moment and not dredging up terrible memories from the past
Yeah.
constantly. It was fun to see the Leafs back on the ice at Scotiabank Arena with a crowd.
Yeah.
That was fun. And then, watching William Nylander pick up where he left off with just really terrific play. Looks like he's in some serious command. Watching John Tavares score a goal. Here's a guy who has some things to accomplish for many reasons this season to come. And some of the nice little stories like this Gabriel kid who Curtis Gabriel, who always
Well,
wanted to play for the Maple Leafs and scored a goal in a preseason contest against the Habs. In the moment, it was great to see, and it's nice to have hockey back in some way, shape, or form.
and starting off, I know that the narrative is always, let's try to get back to normal, and having 10,000 people at Scotiabank Arena was a sign of normalcy. And me being back in Canada on Friday, which we'll talk about in a minute, was another sign of normalcy. Obviously, you would rather have the Game 7 victory than a victory on September 25th. But, we'll take, like you said, we'll take what we get. And the most encouraging thing about last night was John Tavares looking like John Tavares. I think, after that horrible injury that occurred in Game 1 of the first round series and him being knocked out for the series, I think he sort of has a renewed purpose. And it's been talked about a couple times. He had a bunch of players that were Toronto based out to his, I guess, cottage in cottage country for a couple weeks where, he's sort of like it was workouts and things of that nature, but also let's get all on the same page. And, really, the one thing that's been stressed by Kyle Dubas, by Sheldon Keefe, by the players is this is a crap or get off the pot year. Because if they do lose, if they don't make the playoffs or they lose in the first round, I think you're going to see players off this roster traded. You're going to see Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan and Sheldon Keefe probably gone. So they know that there's importance to this season, not only making the playoffs, but the first step is making the playoffs, then having success in the playoffs. So I think that focus is there. But last night, we'll talk about individual players besides Tavares. I mean, if Nylander can play like he plays in the games that he's really good in all the time, he'd be one of the 10 best forwards in the NHL. The problem is he plays like he did last night, or he plays like he did in certain playoff games, and then he's a ghost. He disappears. If with age, with experience, consistency comes, then nobody will have any criticisms of William Nylander. He is extremely talented. It's just that it like his dad, and I'm old enough to remember his dad playing in the NHL. He was, called the Swedish Gretzky. He was great, and then you didn't find him, and then he was great again, and then he disappeared. That they need consistency more than ever. They need consistency out of William Nylander because the depth on this team is questionable compared to other years.
I don't want to belabor the Nylander talk for too long. He was great in last year's playoff. He had some struggles in playoffs prior to that, some glaring issues, some glaring moments, giving pucks away, shooting pucks off the back of goalies' legs and stuff like that. Just didn't lend to the idea that the guy was the greatest player on earth. However, coming off that playoff and being the leader that he was and starting the preseason seamlessly, do you think that number 88 can be a guy that we are not having conversations about going from Jekyll to Hyde and back this season. Maybe this is the season where, you know what, he really becomes that number 1-2 kind of guy on the team, and not just analytically. I mean, the zone entries and, you know, how much he has the puck and, you know, expected goals and stuff like that. But, you know, really, really putting up a huge statistical season and leading by example. Maybe this is the time.
Well, I mean, history would say no, but, you know, players can change as they, like I said, as they get older. What will be interesting is how Sheldon Keefe decides to, you know, sort of split up his lines. I mean, right now, you know, they're going to experiment with combinations, and more than likely, you're going to see Matthews and Marner and Tavares and Nylander, and then whoever play the left side, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But like last night, they played Ilya Mikheyev with Kerfoot and Nylander. And, you know, will they put Nylander on a separate – because remember, he did all that in the playoffs last year without John Tavares. It was like he was the one who was running that line. It was Galchenyuk, Kerfoot, and Nylander was the guy who everything funneled through. So will they try to diversify their offense by putting Nylander on another line and have Tavares play with other players to sort of, you know, bring them up to a certain level? That'll be interesting to see because, you know, it could be. I really do think with the depth at forward and the different combinations that they have, there's going to be a lot of mixing and matching, at least earlier in the season, to see where things fit.
This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario. OakRidgeFord.com. I'm Norm, along with Mike. We are streaming live right now. If you're just picking us up, watch the rest of it, then catch the beginning, because the beginning of this podcast is essential to your life. If you want to watch our ugly mugs in action, you can, and then you can listen to us on your favorite podcast platform a bit later on. Just a bit of a roll call. NASCAR 427 is here. Seve CDC is here. Chris Daniels, I love this. A good way to start Sunday morning. Watch the kids and listen to you guys talk Maple Leafs. Chris, glad to have you. Will 85 is here. Tony Soprano. Tony Dubas is going down with the ship.
Yeah, Tony Soprano must be a Dallas Stars fan, because he says you can trade Nylander to Dallas if you don't want him. We'll take him. Yeah, just give us Miro Heiskanen, and then we'll call it a day. There you go.
Yeah, I don't want to get derailed too much, but Johnny, I'm sure you guys will touch on Morgan's comments. Culture set by Kyle. You know what he's talking about?
Well, I mean, by Morgan's comments, I'm assuming he means what Morgan, Rielly, and Dubas said at the the opening of training camp on Wednesday, where they want to keep the talk about the contract extension private and not. Well, good luck, because unless there's an edict from Morgan Rielly saying at the beginning of the but by the beginning of the year, if the contract isn't signed, we're just gonna play out the season, that type of thing, which we've heard with other free agents before. It's going to be brought up in every media scrum. Any progress on the contract. Well, that's between JP Barry and Kyle Dubas. That's not good enough. People want to know. And honestly, the history of this team is to allow their players to walk in free agency. I don't think they can let Morgan Rielly walk to free agency. Now, Morgan Rielly, if he's asking for $9 million, then he's walking in free agency, because he's not worth $9 million. He's not worth what and any player is worth what they can get. But the Leafs are not going to pay him $9 million. They're not going to probably pay him $8 million. They might pay him $7.5, which is probably right where I think he slots in. But if he's looking to hit it big in free agency, or if he's looking to hit a big number, the way the team is currently constituted, they can't pay him. So that's, we'll see.
Well, Morgan Rielly and his team have a decision to make, right? Push it this season. Hope to be overpaid somewhere. Make his one big contract, because he won't get another massive contract. Or settle into being a Leaf for life, make a whole shitload of money, and stay on board this team and see it through. The choices don't sound simple, because there's a lot of complexity to, what ifs and how can you. but really it is simple. Stay with the Maple Leafs, be the stalwart, go down in history or not, or play through this season, deal with the bullshit every day, all the questions, and push it to a point where you become detached from the only organization you've ever known, and you're out there hoping that going that direction will reap a huge financial benefit. You make your money, go play on another team. Maybe it's a great team, maybe it's not. But hey, you had your time with the Maple Leafs, and then you gave yourself an opportunity to make that kind of money that you feel like you deserve. And you do what a lot of professionals do. They expend, a tenure, and then they go sign the big one. And from there, who knows what the hell happens next?
Well, I know that that Rielly referred to the negotiations as he referred to it as having to do something with business, like a business decision.
Mm-hmm.
Because clearly from his comments from in the past and currently, he wants to stay in Toronto, but so did Zach Hyman. The Leafs could not make it work with Zach Hyman in terms of paying him $5.5 million over 7 years. Their amount was less, so they couldn't do it. Again, I think it's going to come down to, and we're not going to know this until the end of the year. They may negotiate with them after the season and before free agency, but it's probably going to come down to, can you pay 4 forwards $40 million and pay a number one defenseman? And he's not the prototypical number one. He's probably on a great team as a number 2, but you can't replace him. I haven't looked at the free agent class for defense, but Morgan Rielly is probably the best one in the free agent class.
Mm-hmm.
Colton Parayko would have been, but he was signed. There are not much better in this free agent class, which means he's going to get overpaid, and he knows that. And the thing is, if he wants to go to a team like Los Angeles or something like that, who can probably afford to pay him $8.5 million, then he's gone. But we'll see. I mean, I think there are other things that this team has to worry about in the here and the now more than Morgan Rielly's contract situation, which we'll talk about now.
Really? I mean, you believe that they should sign him.
Yes.
You'd like to see him stay.
Yes.
It doesn't appear that there is a replacement on the horizon. And, talking about Rasmus Sandin and some of the younger guys, that's not the point. Guys like Sandin and Brody and whomever else you can surround a guy like Morgan Rielly with, and vice versa, Morgan Rielly supporting them. You need a collective of top-notch talent back on the blue line to accomplish anything in this league. You can't accept watching a stalwart like Rielly go and then turn around and say, well, Sandin will fill his skate. That's you're not going to win a Stanley Cup with one good defenseman. So the point here is, how do you retain him and keep the fabulous 4 in place and continue to build? The reason I believe it's on Rielly to pick a direction for his career is because this Fantastic 4 appears immovable. I mean, no one is guarded fully against being traded. However, the way Kyle Dubas is operating, I mean, he's put everything he has into these guys, and it doesn't look like he wants to trade, a Nylander because he's the easiest guy to go. We know that Marner isn't an easy trade, even though some OGs and converts believe you can easily just move him out. I mean, that remains to be seen, but I don't believe so. So the Leafs it's a ride or die with these guys. So it's not like there's going to be an abundance of cash awaiting Rielly and his team to welcome them back into the fray for another 6-7 years. Rielly's going to have to pick. Is he going to go for the big money, or is he going to take a bit of a haircut and stay with this team and see it through? That's why I believe it's truly on him. And I still feel like it's going to be an issue that's in the back of everyone's mind, sometimes front and center, depending on how Morgan Rielly plays on that given day. I want to ask you about this Curtis Gabriel guy.
Yep.
Doesn't seem, I'm not saying he's some star in the making or flash in the pan either. However, watching a guy like that reminds me of some of these dudes we would see appear with the Maple Leafs for a short time during these training camp runs in years past, or get everybody out of their seats. And in that moment, for that player in particular, it's a big deal. It was nice to see somebody who was out there oblivious to the pressures and the failures of recent past that hang over this organization. Just go out there, don the blue and white, get into a fight, play the game, score a goal, enjoy the moment. It brought me back a little bit and reminded me, there are some joys to this game, even though we feel like there's a lot of sadness.
Well, I mean, Curtis Gabriel is a spark plug. I mean, he has last year he was with San Jose and had a big social media presence and, got a lot of attention. And, he's been a journeyman player. He's played with Minnesota and New Jersey and San Jose. And, he's somebody who came in on a veteran minimum contract and, could be the 13th forward, but more than likely, somebody who clears waivers and goes to the Marlies, and when they play a team like Ottawa or a team tries to get physical with them, he could be somebody who comes up and gets plugged in on a fourth line. Yeah, I mean, I know that I think it was Jason Spezza or Jake Muzzin that said something like he's a guy who protects players and he's somebody who's a good teammate, and there might be a place for him, but the roster is so. I mean, they've got so many options when it comes to forwards, and obviously they're right up against the cap. So I don't know if they're going to be able to carry any more than 13 forwards. And I don't know whether Gabriel, I mean, maybe he's the 13th forward, but other players might be at risk of getting claimed on waivers. And I don't think that he's going to be somebody who does get claimed. So I think he's sort of a standby guy, but a guy that, he wears number 29. I don't know if you remember, Norm. Remember Brad Smith, Motor City Smitty back in the 80s? He wears the same number. He gives the same vibe. He's that heartbeat pulse type of guy. And you need those players, but I just don't know whether he's going to be an option in terms of somebody who plays on the fourth line. Maybe in certain instances, but I don't know if, on a day-to-day basis whether that'll happen.
It was nice to see a player enjoying himself in blue and white for reasons unattached to the past and the future. Living in the moment, playing in the moment, enjoying the moment, and acting as if that moment is the one and only thing that he'll ever get a chance to be a part of when it comes to the Maple Leafs. That was just fun to watch, and a reminder that, the game continues on, and there will be new positive stories to be excited about. So that was nice. Leafs Montreal on Monday. It's preseason. Obviously probably a different complexion of players, at least to a degree. Anything that you're hoping to see from the second game of the preseason?
Well, okay. Based on what we saw last night, I mean, obviously what they'll do is that the players who didn't play last night are going to play on Monday. Last night you saw, and I think that some of the things that I saw at practice on Friday, and they used the same lines in the game on Saturday. So some of the other lines in the other group that'll play will be on the ice, and one of them is on Saturday was Michael Bunting playing with John Tavares and Josh Hosang. Bunting is another player like you were talking about, a Toronto kid, wanted to play for the Leafs, came in on a 2-year deal, took maybe a little less to play for, play close to home and play for a team that he's wanted to play for a long time. He looked like a really good fit with Tavares. Speedy, goes to the front of the net, doesn't shy away. I don't think there's anybody on this roster who's going to replace every aspect of what Zach Hyman was. But Bunting looks like he's going to get an opportunity to play on that second line with Tavares. Hosang, who everybody knows is an incredible talent, but is just, I think, was in the wrong.
Is he still an incredible talent?
He showed some
14 draft. That's 7 years ago.
Right? Yeah, but he showed some stuff last night, and I think he's looking to restart his career after being in the Islanders organization, after sort of being stifled by Lou Lamoriello because he didn't conform to what the Islanders wanted. Maybe he's everything. All the talk is good in terms of he's grown up, he's learned his lesson, he's ready to do what he needs to do to continue his career. Do I think that he's going to make the Leafs? No. Do I think he's going to earn maybe an AHL contract and play with the Marlies? Yeah, it's a no risk. Why not? And if he plays well and he not dominates, but if he does good in the American Hockey League, then he earns an NHL contract, and they found themselves somebody off the scrap heap like they did with Alex Galchenyuk last year. So. But the other
are we blaming another player's failure on Lou? I love it.
Well, no, I mean he clearly. I mean, okay, there was some things with Ho-Sang where he didn't toe the line of what the organization wanted him to do, and that was even happening before Lou. But when Lou got there, that was basically the end of it for him. They wouldn't even
worked out pretty well for the Islanders.
They wouldn't even let him play in the American Hockey League for their team. They loaned him out to another American Hockey League team. So, whatever Lou
you get branded, right? You get branded by Lou, and that's the end of it. But that's the thing. See, well, he's being suppressed and not given an opportunity, and look the way he was treated. Time to move to another organization, and that's where he is now. And perhaps Ho-Sang can find something with the blue and white, but you're right though, Mike. It's not likely that he makes the opening night roster. And if he truly does want to reinvigorate his career and get back on the right path, being in the minor leagues with a team like the Maple Leafs that'll probably have a spot for him at some point is a good idea. Let's just see if he can continue to run with it.
And he said the right things. Like, if they want me to play in the ECHL, I'll do it. He just
that's good. Yeah. I like it. That sounds good.
And you know what? For a kid, and Steve Simmons wrote a column about this a couple days ago, for a kid at age 14 who was on par with Connor McDavid in terms of his ability, I think it was in the GTHL.
A lot of players probably.
You're right. And as they grow, they change. But he was a first-round pick. He had an unbelievable ability. I saw him play junior. He was great in junior. When he's been given an opportunity in the American Hockey League, he has scored at times. And even I saw him play a few games for the Islanders, and he looked good. So, this is a restart. And if they give him an opportunity, and I think it'll be with the Marlies, then we could see something. But in the chat, they're talking about Bunting. The one concern about Michael Bunting is 26 games of NHL experience and age 26. Now, thing is, and Kyle Dubas and Sheldon Keefe know him because they coached him for 2 years, or Sheldon Keefe coached him for 2 years in the Zoo. You don't know whether that streak at the end of last season with the Coyotes was for real, but they did put him in scoring situations. They did have him playing, I think, with Christian Dvorak and Phil Kessel, and he did score 10 goals in 21 games. You put him with Tavares. Tavares is going to set him up for stuff, and he scored a goal yesterday. I like his energy and his willingness to go where you need to go. So I think they're going to give him an opportunity. But that's the whole thing. They're going to give lots of players opportunity. They at practice on Friday, they used Nick Ritchie with Adam Brooks, who's the Austin Matthews replacement during the preseason, and Mitch Marner, which means when the season starts, it's possible that they're going to have Ritchie on the left wing with Matthews and Marner. Now, Nick, I like the aspects what Nick Ritchie brings to this team. The size, he doesn't shy away from the physicality. He goes in the corners. He stands in front of the net. The problem might be he's just too slow for that top line. Now, they're going to find that out. They're going to see how that works because they played Joe Thornton on that top line, and Ritchie's faster than him. So can those two great players compensate for what Ritchie brings? Because he brings different things to that line than Hyman does. I think he will act as a sort of deterrent to people trying to take some physical liberties with Marner and Matthews. If he goes to the front of the net and he's tough to handle, then that's one less player that's going to impede Matthews and Marner in the offensive zone. All these things, if they go with this, it may not work, but I think they're sort of just going to toy with these ideas and test them out in preseason and maybe early in the regular season.
Just a couple things there. Joe playing on the top line was more ceremonial than functional. That's the way it turned out. So that it was great. It was nice to have Joe as part of the organization. It's too bad they couldn't go on a deeper run with him while he was here. But Joe Thornton can say he played for the Maple Leafs, and Leafs fans can say that St. Joe, future Hall of Famer, one of the greats, at least in this generation, played with the Blue and White. So that was lots of fun. The core four, the Fantastic Four, those are your guys. They've moved some players out, brought some players in. You still have a nice group of support personnel that we know and can trust. Other than what I just mentioned, how can the Maple Leafs this season change the dynamic, the strategy, knowing that this is a do or die season, but you're still dealing with some guys who are getting acclimated to the organization, still some unknowns, there's still some experimentation that's going to take place. What can this team do to give the Scotiabank division foes from last season a different look and surprise some of the teams that they haven't seen in over a year and a half?
Well, I mean, I think the first quarter of this year is sort of going to be sort of a settling in and a feeling out process when it comes to this roster, and they're going to need the core four to carry them while they sort of get everything else in order. I mean, again, you're going to see, probably Bunting on that second line with Tavares. You're probably going to see Rielly on the top line with Matthews and Marner. What are you going to do with, Alex Kerfoot should be the third line center, but there's talk about them wanting a shutdown line with the free agent addition David Kampf as the third line center. And if that's the case, then, then Kerfoot moves to the wing, or either on that line or on one of the top two lines. And that, that's where, where does Ilya Mikheyev factor in? Where, do they keep Nylander on a separate line? What is the fourth line going to look like? Is it going to be more physical with Simmons and Curtis Gabriel, or is it going to be more of a skill line with an Andre Kasha? I mean, they have so many pieces. Do they sign Nikita Gusev, who we haven't seen yet? Defensively, we know more than likely Rielly and Brody and Muzzin and Hall are going to be the top two pairings. That means the bottom pairing could be Sandin and Dermott, could be Sandin and Liljegren, could be Dermott and Liljegren. You don't know. But they're probably going to carry 7 defensemen. And then the overarching question is the goaltending. Can Jack Campbell repeat what he did last year? What does Peter Mrazek bring? Yesterday, in the first game of the preseason, they didn't play either one of them. They played Michael Hutchinson, who's going to probably be with the Marlies or the third goalie. And
speaking of a lifer, the Leafs will never rid themselves of Michael Hutchinson.
Well,
he's going to play some watch. He will play some big games this season. I know he will. He's just there. And Mike, Rick for Richie with Tavares and Marner and Bunting, Matthews and Nylander are my top two lines. Time to get Marner back with Tavares.
That's probably
I know that's a hope and a dream and a prayer and a wish.
It's Matthews and Marner. They're not.
Yeah, I know.
Unless they go 10 games without scoring a point, they're keeping.
But they won't. If the playoffs were just a clusterfuck because those two guys couldn't get it together. You knew that a great season was going to end in disaster because it was just totally leafy. Yeah. And these guys pick up where they left off and continue the ascension of their careers. Marner and Matthews will, where they left off, will wear out the opposition again. Both of those guys, if healthy, will put up close to, if not more, 100 points in the season. So other than people wanting to see Marner demoted because of his disastrous playoff, there's really no reason to split him and Matthews up. They have been unbelievably successful. Nylander, we've seen him survive with guys like Nylander. We've seen him play well on the power play. We've seen him play with not necessarily scrubs, but players who are not at his status. And his fan base will say, oh, it's not fair. He should be playing with more elite players. John Tavares is certainly elite, and whomever else they can, put on the other side will contribute. Would he do well with Matthews? For sure. Would he do well with Marner? For sure. But at the end of the day, Matthews and Marner are a thing. And I know a lot of the people who, again, are pissed off with Marner and want him sent to, purgatory. Just going to have to deal with it the same way a lot of us are going to have to deal with, swallowing that failure and pushing forward day to day, believing in the teams, but knowing that what's happening right now isn't really that big a deal. It's what will happen in 6 or 7 months. But again, I don't want to belabor it. It's just, I just don't see those two guys getting split up. Few words to you.
Organizationally, the Leafs look at it as Marner finished in the top 5 in scoring, and Matthews won the Rocket Richard together. They're not going to split them up. The one thing regrettable from yesterday, and I hated to see this, was Ian Scott, who is a very good prospect, but just can't stay healthy. And after he's played 2 games for the Marlies over the last 3 seasons. Obviously, with COVID and everything else, that shut things down. But he's had recurrent leg, hip, groin injuries, and he made a couple nice saves last night beginning the 3rd period, and then suddenly skated to the bench and left, and he hurt his groin again, according to Sheldon Keefe, and he's out long term. The Leafs are lucky they brought in a guy from the SHL to go along with Joseph Wall and Hutchinson. They needed that organizational depth, because I don't know, based on all the injuries that Ian Scott has had over the last couple of years, whether it's just going to pan out. He just cannot seem to stay healthy, unfortunately.
Bummer. Mike, I guess it's a belated welcome back to Canada. Back in the Great White North for the first time in over a year?
19 months. Well, I told this to some of the reporters at the Ford Performance Center on Friday. Mm-hmm. The last time I was in Canada was for the David Ayers game. So it was February 22nd, 2020. And I came over on the 24th of September. So 19 months. And it was great, and I'm hoping that very soon, with capacities being increased at the Scotiabank Arena and Rogers Center, fans are getting back in, and that's going to correspond to the number of media members that are allowed into games, that I'll be able to cover games this season, which will be great. Watching them on TV and doing Zoom interviews are not the same as being there and talking to people. So it was great.
Toronto has the 2nd most high-rise buildings in North America, but despite the cluster being so large, I can imagine you driving down the QEW and going, "What the F? Where did that building come from?" Well, it's just the growth. The growth is insane. So it's been 19 months. You know what Toronto looked like. It looks different now because the place continues to grow, and it's been doing it during the pandemic. So there had to be a few things that you looked at and said that wasn't there when I left.
Well, less the skyscrapers, because once there are 40, it's tough to notice 42 or 43.
I do,
but you do.
I notice them all because I like tall buildings.
For me, and anybody who comes up the QEW and knows, and I won't talk too long on this. There was an accident on the Burlington Skyway on Friday, so of course that put everything. Brutal. So I had to take an alternate route, which I have done many times, because obviously, and going down, I think, Mississauga Road to get to Lakeshore, to get to the Ford Performance Center. Mm-hmm. I noticed so many new builds on these sort of like side roads. They're knocking down old houses and building like $2 million houses and mansions. It's just the urban sprawl of it's just Oakville, not just Mississauga. Mm-hmm. It's sprawling out. It's but it's a great.
It's never ending.
Never
just
ending.
Like our love and devotion to the Maple Leafs. Hey, when crossing the Burlington Skyway reminds me of the opening of the sitcom Taxi. when the taxi's driving across the Brooklyn Bridge and never mind. I'm telling you, go watch it and then drive across. Well, I used to work in Hamilton and I would cross it all the time, and I'd feel like I was in the opening of Taxi.
I've been outside of Canada so long, there's an extra stop on the GO train. That's how long it's been.
Yeah, it's crazy. Just real quick about the baseball race, 7 games each for the Red Sox, Yankees, and Blue Jays. Obviously, it's a wrap-up here with the Jays in Minnesota, Boston, New York, and then it's a crucial 3-gamer between the Yankees and Blue Jays. I'm a Blue Jays guy. I grew up. The reason I went to play college and professional baseball is because of the Blue Jays, but I understand the game, and I care for the game completely, and I watch all these teams. I've never once said the Jays will make the playoffs. I was excited about the run they had. It happened a little too early, and the pitching has come home to roost, at least the starting pitching. The hitting has kind of fizzled out a little bit, which is not a problem. You're not going to hit gangbusters for 40, 50 games to finish a season and run through a World Series. It just isn't going to happen. Are they out? Are the Blue Jays done? Will they not make the playoffs? No. However, they have to go 6-1 here to finish it up, because the Yankees look, again, for a team that still leaves a lot to be desired. They've gone through their hiccup, and it looks like they've kind of found their feet and just in the nick of time to back into the playoffs, and that's all you really have to do.
Well, the Blue Jays have to sweep the Yankees now. They're 2 games behind going into tonight's game. The Yankees play the Red Sox the final game of that series, and they'll know whether the Blue Jays had beaten the Twins by then, because it's an afternoon game. But right now, if things stay the way they are, status quo, they're 2 games behind the Yankees going into that series. They have to sweep them, and it's impossible, because I saw the Blue Jays play the Yankees earlier the year in Buffalo, and it was a nip and tuck battle. So it's
what are the odds? No, what are the odds the Jays sweep them 4 straight in New York and then sweep them again 3 straight in Toronto? I mean, baseball is a stat game. I mean, projections. That's tough for them to do. And even if Boston starts to sputter a little bit, to sweep you have to sweep or beat the Yankees thoroughly to catch Boston, or beat the Yankees to catch the Yankees. They're not out of it. But it feels like they've expended that really that mighty energy that got them back into the race a little too early, and that's just the way she goes. However, I'm not anointing the Yankees or Boston wild card recipients by any means. It may come down to the last day of the season.
Being a longtime Yankee fan, this team is the most schizophrenic of any squad I've seen in years. They can turn it on and turn it off. They've won 13 in a row and then lost 13 of 15. So, they could sweep the Red Sox and be ahead in the first wild card and then lose all 3 to Toronto. And it's very possible. So I'm not taking anything for granted.
Well, if you are a baseball fan, enjoy the baseball. We're all Leafs supporters, Maple brothers and sisters. So, hey, they're off to a flying start in terms of the preseason. Let's continue with the good vibes. Live in the moment. Be excited or be upset about what happens, and then we, put it behind us and see what happens next. That's really all we can do, and let's just see if we can keep harmony together and leave the acrimony in a lockbox and not bring it out at any point during the season. Easier said than done, Mike. Have yourself a good one, my friend.
Thanks, Norm.